So Biden goes left, much more liberal, and his approving rating is up? How could this possibly be? Didn't the media tell him over and over if he forgave student loan debt, there could be a backlash? It's almost like the media just repeats Republicans' talking point. The Emerson poll out conducted that 45% of people approve of Biden's performance, a 3% increase from last month. 49% of voters disapprove of his performance. That's a 2% drop. So there is a 5% in his favor. Now, this is the question. Why is it happening? It could possibly be that the media no longer can distract from what Republicans are actually doing. When Democrats said Republicans are trying to ban abortion, they said, we're not. So what does the media say? Why are Democrats being so hysterical? Obviously, Republicans don't want to ban abortion. And those Supreme Court justices said it was settled law. So why are Democrats throwing a fit about this? It is very clear that abortion is one of the top reasons, because the approval rating of Biden among women jumped 10 points from 39 to 49. So maybe stripping women of their autonomy is a bad thing? His low of 36% back in July seems really far in the mirror, doesn't it? Now, if the media actually started reporting of all the success he has and what exactly that means for the people, what do you think of his approval rating then would be? But the media still talks about how Republicans got an edge on the economy. Why? How about they talk about it this way? Republicans are still favored in the economy, but we can't figure out why. Republican states are welfare states, as in they take over $100 billion every year from blue states just to support themselves. Every time a Republican does office, he crashes the economy. Why do the majority of Americans believe that Republicans are good for the economy? Is truly astounding. Let's look into this and figure out where the disconnect could be. The reason why they don't is the disconnect is the media itself, just reporting what Republicans say. Don't ask questions. Don't demand that they provide you answers why this time electing Republicans won't mess up the economy. So Biden's approval rating is up and he goes left. So what should we do about this? We should ask very specifically, is he still going to win in November? He's not on the ballot. So why is the media ignoring his poll ratings going up and not giving him credit for the obvious win that's coming in November? Because the media cannot tell you the truth. Because the reality is, the only reason whatsoever that Republicans get elected is the media covers for them. We know Trump goes through lawyers, but he just spent $3 million on his brand new lawyer. And that high-priced lawyer that was working on the Mar-a-Lago stolen documents, apparently he's off the case. He was sidelined after less than a month. Twitler does go through lawyers, but this is a little extreme. He might be shifting cases, but that $3 million he paid for this lawyer is not going to go all that far if the lawyer has to continue to shift cases, because Twitler has a lot of them. There's a reason why lawyers prioritize a single type of case because they already know that law. They don't have to go and search new law and work on a different thing. They drill down on a single issue and charge you a lot for it. So, if he is switching cases, it's going to cost Twitler a lot more. For $3 million, he's not going to really get all that much he's paying for. While Twitler's spokesman says he isn't leaving the case and he remains an important part of the legal team, and any suggestion otherwise is untrue. The fact that we even have to report any of the stupid stuff his spokesman's come out with is just a waste of everybody's time. Because the amount of lies that they say is extreme. So Christopher Kriess is leaving one case. Maybe he's going to another. Maybe he's just quitting on Twitler. Because it's not like he can win. Robert Reich is like most economists. They say Republican policies are dumb because they are. The majority of economists are on the Democratic side. It isn't because that the universities are indoctrinating people and Republicans are not smart enough to find any evidence of it. It's more along the lines that Democrats actually create jobs and build a good economy. Now watch this clip, but there is one mistake Robert Reich clearly makes. The Fed is not actually trying to control inflation. The Fed is actively trying to destroy jobs, and they just about admitted to just that.
Secretary Reich, can you hear us?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Robert Reich. Yesterday, Fed policymakers continued their battle against inflation with a third straight supersized rate increase, warning that they will continue to raise borrowing costs. They assume that the underlying economic problem is a tight labor market, causing wages to rise and prices to rise in response. So interest rates and interest rate increases are necessary to slow wage growth. With due respect, this assumption is wrong. Recent wage hikes have not kept up with inflation. Most workers' paychecks are shrinking in terms of real purchasing power. Rather than causing inflation, wages are reducing inflationary pressures. The underlying economic problem, in addition to global problems, is not wage price inflation, it's profit price inflation. That is, corporations raising their prices above increases in their costs, using those cost increases as excuses to raise their prices and profits. Corporate profits are close to levels not seen in over a half century. Corporations have the power to raise prices without losing customers because they face so little competition. Since the 1980s, 2/3 of all American industries have become more concentrated. Grocery prices are through the roof, for example, largely because just 4 companies control 85% of meat and poultry processing, and 4 giants control 70% of grain. One corporation sets the price for most of the nation's seed corn. 2 firms dominate consumer staples. All are raising prices and increasing profits because they can. Meanwhile, Big Pharma is increasing drug prices like mad. The airline industry has gone from 12 carriers in 1980 to just 4 today, which are rapidly raising ticket prices. Wall Street has consolidated into 5 giant banks, raking in record profits on higher spreads. Broadband is dominated by 3 giant cable companies that are raising their fees, and so on. With inflation driven by these conglomerates raising prices to increase their profit margins. The major effect of interest rate hikes is just to depress wages and limit jobs. As the economy slows, workers are even less likely to get wage increases that keep up with inflation. And unemployment is going to rise. The Fed now sees the unemployment rate rising to 4.4% next year, up from 3.7% now. That would mean the loss of 1.2 million jobs. I urge Congress and the administration to take direct action against this profit price inflation, rather than rely solely on the Fed to raise interest rates and put the burden of fighting inflation on average working people who are not responsible for it. First, a windfall profits tax would help. A temporary tax on price increases exceeding the producer price indexes, costs of producing consumer goods. Congress should also direct the Federal Trade Commission to investigate whether price increases reflect added costs or opportunistic price gouging. Second, bold antitrust enforcement is essential. Even the credible threat of antitrust enforcement can deter corporations from raising prices higher than their costs. And third, as a backstop, price control should be considered. Now, it's true they have many disadvantages in terms of distorting markets, but the current inflation emerging from the pandemic is analogous to the inflation that occurred right after World War II, when economists argued for temporary price controls on important goods to buy time to overcome supply bottlenecks and prevent corporate profiteering. They should be considered now for the same reasons. In sum, the inflation we are now experiencing is not due to wage gains. It is due to increases in corporate profits. And it's excessive profits, not wages, that need to be controlled.
So, every time they bring up the supply chain, remember, corporate supply chains, the corporation, businesses' supply chains broke down because they fired everybody and shut them down to save money. Now they're trying to get them back up running because the economy is working. Why? Because Democrats fix things. Inflation isn't about wages. It's very specifically about corporate greed. Since they're not actually making as much money as they could be, and they found out that they could just raise prices, they're doing that to make money. And the only reason why they're able to do that is there is no more competition. The competition has been wiped out because they merged and were bought out. And now, businesses have to use the same business as everybody else. They can raise prices because it's not like you can go to anyone else. If the media actually reported on what was going on, Robert Reich probably wouldn't have made that mistake. He probably would have seen the Fed chairman sitting in front of Congress saying very specifically, his actions will not bring down gas prices, nor will it bring down food prices. They are specifically looking to destroy your job. Because even though the Fed's job is to... Now, I take this directly from the Fed's website to promote steady prices and full employment, to promote stability in the financial system, and to facilitate sustainable economic growth. Other duties include regulating of the banks and industry, and make sure consumers have access to the information they need in order to participate in the financial system. So, one of their jobs is to provide full employment. However, the Fed wants unemployment to be 4.4% next year. At least that's what they're predicting. And they are actively working to that by raising interest rates. They're looking to destroy the job market. Don't take my word for it. How about straight from the horse's mouth?
Acting Chairman, I appreciate the help of the Chairman this morning, and thank you for being with us, Chair Powell. So Americans are struggling with rising costs, and all eyes turn to the Fed. Last week, you announced that the Fed would raise rates by 0.75 of a percentage point, the biggest increase in nearly 30 years. So let's talk about what the Fed is and isn't doing when it raises interest rates to try to bring down inflation. Let's start with gas prices. The price of gas is up 40% since Russia invaded Ukraine in February. Chair Powell, will gas prices go down as a result of your interest rate increase?
I would not think so, no.
Okay. That matters because gas prices are one of the single biggest drivers of inflation. Energy prices overall drove a third of the inflation last month, but the Fed's tools, as you say, have no impact here. So let's look at another necessity, food. Price of groceries is up nearly 12% this year. Americans feel the pinch. No matter how much groceries cost, people still got to eat. Chair Powell, will the Fed's interest rate increases bring food prices down for families?
I wouldn't say so, no.
Okay. So a Fed increase won't bring down these prices. And why? Because rate hikes won't make Vladimir Putin turn his tanks around and leave Ukraine. Rate hikes won't break up monopolies. Rate hikes won't straighten out the supply chain or speed up ships or stop a virus that is still causing lockdowns in some parts of the world. So let's talk about what interest rate increases can do. Chair Powell, you said last week that interest rate increases, quote, moderate demand. Can you just explain a little more about what that means?
Sure. So we think about interest rate increases as affecting financial conditions and then the economy through three broad channels, the first of which is interest-sensitive spending. So that's durable goods and automobiles and things like that. So interest rates go up, people's demand for, as a result of higher interest rates, will moderate or decline so that supply and demand can get into better balance. The second channel is just asset prices generally. Interest rates, as they go up, will cause asset prices to moderate across the economy, and people spend a little bit less out of their lower level of wealth. The third channel is the exchange rate, which is really just another asset price, and that just basically as the dollar strengthens, as rates go up, the dollar would strengthen, which would tend to drive.
So I appreciate this, and I do. I appreciate the explanation, but let me just see if I can just put a little more plain vanilla explanation of what's going on here. If I understand what you've said and what economists are saying across the board is that when you raise interest rate, there's going to be less money to invest, and that is, it's going to dampen business investment. Is that a fair statement?
I think the idea is to
Makes it more
moderate
expensive
demand
to invest,
so that it can be in better balance with supply.
Okay.
In
So
the current
it's going to make it
situation,
more
demand is well in excess of supply in some areas of our economy.
more expensive to invest, which in turn is going to throw workers out of work. And when they're out of work, they have less money to spend. So I get that rate increases stop companies from spending money to build new plants or to buy new trucks or to hire new people. Right, Chair Powell? When money's more expensive, they're less inclined to do that. I think that's what you just said on asset pricing, right?
Well, in the labor market, you have, as you know, you have a situation where there's a shortage of workers, and there are two job vacancies for every person who's actively looking for work. So part of this is to get the labor market back into balance.
Well, I appreciate you call it back into balance. What I'm trying to get at, though, is what does the tool of raising rates do? And part of what you just said is that it increases, in effect, the cost to invest, to buy those trucks or new plants or to hire new people. The reason I raise this and the reason I'm so concerned about this is rate increases make it more likely that companies will fire people and slash hours to shrink wage costs. Rate increases also make it more expensive for families to do things like borrow money for a house. And so far, the cost this year of a mortgage has already doubled.
Yes. Nothing the Fed will do, nothing the Fed is doing, will bring down inflation of gas or your groceries. They're specifically looking to tank the job market. Because if the job market goes, people will spend less. So this failed system that corporations have on the supply chain that is causing temporary inflation, which they are using to price gouge, will go away because people won't have money to spend. Now this goes back to the age-old question, why does the Fed care more about inflation and corporate profits than doing their job providing for full unemployment? Because the Fed has been captured by the right wing. Now we got to ask ourselves, does the Fed favor Republican presidents? It most certainly does. However, you can't prove that there is a bias, but even though that the majority of economists are on the Democratic side because Democratic states have the big cities because they run good economies and keep crime low, the Fed has always raised rates for Democrats and kept them artificially low for Republicans. Yes, some people complain that the Fed hasn't done enough to help Republicans, but then again, no matter what the Fed does, Republicans will always complain. The media is out to get Republicans. How? Because the media won't hold them accountable, so they all go crazy. There's the secret conspiracy theory. The media has been allowing Republicans to do whatever they want, and it doesn't hold them accountable. And they go more wackadoo. Funny. Great conspiracy, isn't it? It could be just a coincidence that the Democrats do better with the economy, so the Fed always raises it under Democrats. True. Democrats are much better with the economy, and, well, George W. Bush and Twitler both crashed the economy. So, maybe. I would say that the Fed is a tool for the rich and should be treated as such. It also has never been able to cool off the economy without crashing it within 2 years. So the fact that they still get away with saying it, that this time it's going to work, and no one asks them the rational question, how is it going to work this time when it has never worked before? See, that's the question we should really put to these people and get them to tell us what full unemployment means. Because clearly, the current unemployment is not high enough to satisfy full employment. Now, is it? So, let's hope that they fail once again. Because the stock market was detached from historical norms during Twitler's pandemic. Maybe business leaders have learned that history is only that way because people said it should be that way. So people feared that there was going to be a recession, and so they fired people because of the fear of the recession. Well, not considering what happens after the fact. We're currently in the supply chain issue because businesses messed up. They fired people and shut everything down. And then they tried to start right back up because Democrats jump-started the economy, and it is right back where it was before Twitler crashed it. And now businesses are having a hard time getting the supply chain in order, and they're ripping people off in the meantime. So maybe people have learned that the historic trend is only that way because people acted that way. It could be that people have finally realized the truth. Acting that way is dumb because corporations are making a fraction of the profit that they could if they didn't mess up the supply chain. Maybe you shouldn't cut your labor force and head off an imagined downturn because you're going to mess up the supply chain. Businesses aren't making as much profit. Yes, they are price gouging, but what would happen if store shelves were full? Gas wasn't eating into people buying stuff? And slamming the economy into the ground in the first place might make a mistake. How about we learn? The Fed can't always do what it claims. Or, it has never once been able to do what it claims. The stock market will go up until the end of the United States. And maybe, just maybe, having the Fed try to crash the job market isn't good for the economy. So, what do we find out with Biden's poll ratings going up? America wants the left's policies. They want progressive policies. Cutting debt for those that were ripped off for colleges, because every single person told you you have to go to college to have a good life. That's popular. Raising taxes on the rich? Popular. Doing what's best for the American people? Popular. All left policies, all progressive policies. And do the Democrats get credit for it? Generally not. However, this time, Bernie Sanders is getting a little credit for, being right. Check out this video.
And you know what? If you do what the people want and not what the corporate world wants or billionaire campaign contributors want, you win elections.
Finally, this week, Bernie Sanders got some credit for the success that Joe Biden has seen from some of his policies. This is largely being ignored by everybody. That Bernie Sanders is the one that popularized these ideas that are now helping Democrats and Joe Biden. It's very, go back to like 2016, 2020, both primaries, and see how the media treated Bernie, how they fear-mongered about his crazy ideas that no one supports. Meanwhile, when one of them are at least somewhat kind of implemented, doesn't go as, student debt cancellation, doesn't go as far as it could, but when it's implemented, massive support for Joe Biden, boosting him with young voters going into the midterms that are now expected to help Democrats the way that things, at least right now, are looking in polling. But let me get to the first clip here. So this is Chris Hayes, to his credit, bringing on Bernie Sanders and bringing up how he is the one that brought these ideas to the forefront.
One of the big accomplishments of the unified democratic governance was the announcement of the president's cancellation, $10,000 of student debt, $20,000 for those who are getting Pew grants. You can chart a clear trajectory from your presidential campaign that championed that issue along with Elizabeth Warren to it actually happening. And there was a lot of back and forth. Is this going to cause a backlash? Are people going to be resentful because I had to pay my loans? What is your sense of the outcome of this in terms of what it's meant for what it's meant for people's lives and also what it's meant politically?
I have the radical idea that good policy is good politics. And it is good policy to cancel student debt in this country. I cannot tell you, Chris, how many young and middle-aged people I have talked to who have hesitated, having children, can't afford to buy a house, whose lives are in economic trouble because they're paying off these huge student debts. So what Biden did was the right thing. I would have gone further. It's what the people want.
So the media attacks Democrats wherever they go. They attack Democrats for even thinking about cutting student loans. And might be a big blowback. Where exactly did they find it? It wasn't in the polls. It wasn't in Republicans' mouths. But since they crash their economy, have higher crime, contribute actually nothing, and have no idea how to do anything. They have no policies to fix stuff. They just scream. Why does the media listen to them? Because it's easy. They repeat what both sides say, gibber a little bit, and let you on their way. And the American people get dumber. Republicans are able to turn more into fascist, and eventually, well, let's face it, eventually they're going to come for the media and kill them all. Because even Fox is not right-wing enough for the fascists. See, that's a problem. Unless you're 100% fascist, you're going to be hanging by the end of a rope. Who would have thought that the world could destroy a nation by not going to war with them? It's truly astonishing. Where Russia has failed to take over Ukraine, they also have failed to keep their economy running. And this isn't because the Americans went to war with them. This is only because the world said, no war, here's sanctions. It's truly astonishing and something that we should really remember. War is unnecessary. All we have to do is stop playing with people, and their economy collapses. Since Putin says he's going to recruit 300,000 soldiers that, they only served, they actually have to have military service, and they're just being called back because they're in the reserves. 200,000 Russians have fled in just a few days, while there's 2,300 arrests. Now the fact is, research on post-industrial studies warn that Putin's mobilization will have truly catastrophic consequences, including the death of Russia's economy and the downfall of Putin's regime itself. The Russian economy is going to die by winter. Now I think I was right. The mobilization announced on September 21st was a milestone that really divided Russian history into before and after. Russian economist Valatsky Inometsky. However, the Kremlin is unlikely to recruit 300,000. The Independent reports seems it's going to be more of 1.2 million. Since Putin has lied about everything so far and has lied for decades, I would bet more along the lines of the 1.2 million. Where police and recruitment officers have also rounded up students after Putin says, now, full-time students are not going to be sent to the front line as cannon fodder. Putin has already had ceremonies sending new recruits off to the front lines. And there is plenty of reports and pictures of the weapons Putin is handing out. Rusted machine guns. And they're told that they should like it. Now, how they were fighting the war in the first place? They were essentially sending cannon fodder and then shelling and sending cannon fodder again. So the casualties that we are hearing, 60,000 Russian troops, does seem like in the end is going to be a very big undercount. Now, what did other people say? How about mobilization is not partial in Veritas? Summons come to students, petitioners, fathers of many children people with disabilities. Alexandria Garcimpov, president of the Free Britannia Foundation. What does Washington's economist predict? He predicted a 4.5% drop at the end of this year. Now he predicts that for October alone. And next month will only consolidate this trend. Now my spring forecast for a 10% fall seems almost too optimistic. Russia is going to lose hundreds of thousands in this war, and millions more will just straight up disappear to avoid fighting. Now, with Russia's economy already having so many issues from the sanctions alone, what is going to happen next as the residents flee? Now, the richer parts of Russia, Moscow, St. Petersburg, they have lots more money to leave the country. And as they see that their children are being dragged into war, anyone with money will get their child out of the country. So Ukraine has kind of destroyed Russia altogether. And honestly, we should take this as the world never again has to actually go to war. We just need to put more sanctions on any country dumb enough to attack another. Since Republicans haven't made it clear enough to those that actually pay attention to politics that they don't actually want to win, they want to rule over the United States and issue dictates from on high, making you do whatever they feel like. Ron Johnson, who's up for election this November, has said that Social Security and Medicare shouldn't be guaranteed. Congress should have to debate this every year. He said, and I quote, "What's mandatory are things like Social Security and Medicare. If you qualify for the entitlement, you just get it no matter what the cost. It's on automatic pilot." So what do we get here? Johnson wants this negotiated every year. So what's going to actually happen? Well, the media will ignore this pretty much like they ignore most of the Republicans' autocratic nature, desire to destroy Social Security and Medicare, and make everyone in the United States live under whatever deluded Christianity they actually think. But what would happen if Ron Johnson and the Republicans get their way? And every year they would have to negotiate Social Security. So, let's take this thought process to its inevitable conclusion. We start off with Republicans having enough control of the Senate, 51% of the seats, 51 seats, and one more than half in the House. So what exactly would happen? Republicans would pass this for negotiating every year. Then they would go to negotiate it. And Republicans would fail to find a compromise on those in the party that want to completely gut Social Security. And those that don't want to gut Social Security because it's going to devastate them in the coming election. If Republicans are the ones to take Social Security away and allow millions of people to be kicked out of their homes, crushing the economy, they will turn to the Democrats and beg for Social Security and Medicare to be put back. As well as Medicaid, because that's also one that they would definitely demand to be negotiated every single year. So half of Republicans would vote for Medicaid and Social Security go back to where it was before they screwed everything up, supported by all the Democrats. That is the end result of this massive stupidity. And Johnson, as dumb as he is one of the smarter Republicans. He is one of the less radical Republicans. That should scare the hell out of you. And if the media actually cared about informing you, you would have known about this already. So if you like those videos, please help. The YouTube algorithm is horribly biased against, progressives. And the Republicans have massive amounts of money just to buy it off. So every time you like, every time you put a comment down below, helps us out. So like, subscribe, and if you really want to help the environment, down below is a link to a GoFundMe page where it has a brand new power generation that is 0% carbon emission and one of the cheapest productions of electricity the world has ever had. So go down, help us out.